Hello, and welcome to another Mr. 35mm film camera review. And I know, some of you may be like, oh, hey, where are those digital camera reviews? Well, I've been on a hell of a film kick lately, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun, so I'm gonna keep doing that for a bit. At any rate, don't worry, I haven't forgotten that I also like digital cameras. In fact, in another video, I'll probably go over all the new toys that I've gotten into recently. The list is kind of never ending. So rest assured, there are digital cameras being looked at, being reviewed. Uh, Today's camera just isn't one of them. With that, recently I picked up this, the Nikon FM2, locally from the marketplaces. Uh, the ones from the likes of the Metabook or the Face Appstagram, whatever ones you find deals on nowadays. At any rate, it actually came with not the lens that's on here now, but a 50mm f2 and a Solagore dual focal. This is apparently an 85 or 135mm f4 lens. I've never seen one of these. Let me know if you have and if you've used it and what your opinion is of it, because yeah, I still haven't shot it. It's very funky. I will eventually later, but right now I just haven't yet. I've actually mostly stuck to using the 50 f2 on it because it's just a nice lens, and that's actually on this camera right here. At any rate, some of you may know this camera and this lens from that photo. However, this lens is actually not the correct lens. I have a 105mm AI lens, and apparently the one used for that photo is the 105mm f2.5 AIS. As far as I know, same optical formula though, so close enough, right? At any rate, like I said, it doesn't really matter since when I was actually reviewing this camera, for the most part, I stuck to using the 50mm f2, again, because it fit the camera well, and maybe also aligns with something about this channel. Not sure what, though. Oh well. What is the FM2? Well, the FM2 is a 35mm film SLR made by, at the time, Nippon Kogaku KK, or Nikon as it's known as today. This features the Nikon F mount, specifically the one made for AI and newer lenses, so don't use unmodified pre-AI lenses on it. They don't have that notch to catch the aperture tab, the one right over her. You're probably not going to see that. And if you mount a pre-AI lens on it, it can break the tab off, so bad times. This camera was produced from 1982 to 2001. What? I read that correctly. That is a hell of a production run. Anyways, the FM2 came in a couple actual different flavors, if you're not aware. For now, just know mine is an early FM2n. The FM2 is equipped with a purely mechanical shutter capable of speeds from 1 second to 1/4000th of a second, plus bulb mode. The FM2n has a flash sync speed of 1/250th of a second, and the camera features things like 10-second self-timer and bulb mode, which I think I might have already said. At any rate, the metering system is a 60/40 center-weighted system, and the ISO dial covers from ISO 12 to 6400. The finder has a magnification of 0.86 and coverage of 93%. Pretty big, pretty accurate, but not as big as an OM1 or Pentax ME Super. Still, pretty big though. Additionally, the finder features a shutter display, aperture display, and obviously metering info. The default focusing screen on the FM2 that I got, the FM2, is a horizontal split prism with a micro prism collar. The camera can be powered by a single 3-volt battery pack or two 1.5-volt cells like LR44s. And because the shutter is purely mechanical, if you don't feel like using the meter, this will function perfectly fine with no batteries in it. Again, minus the meter. Body only, the FM2 comes in at around 540 grams, depending on the variant that you're looking at. And this thing has such a ridiculous production timeline that we have to go over multiple MSRPs. Initially, on release, the camera came in at 364 US dollar dues. Then, in 1988, it was 525 US dollar dues. And then, from 1995 to its final production year of 2001, it was 745 US dollar dues. In today's dollars, that comes in at around $1,383, or 1950-ish poutines. The variations. You might have noticed the long production run, and you may have noticed that I said a few times that the camera came with different variations. The original FM2 included a titanium shutter, and it had a flash sync speed of 1/200th of a second. In 1984, a new variation was released known as the FM2n, early version. This one used an improved titanium shutter, and flash sync would be at 1/250th, like on mine. You can see that right there. These would be replaced later on in 1989, still called the FM2n, but it's the late version. And that replaced the titanium shutter with a high-strength substitute made out of aluminum. Now, you can tell these two apart by looking at the shutter itself. Let me open that up. Not sure if you can see, hopefully you can. In the back, the titanium variant uses a honeycomb pattern on the blades, like on mine. And the later ones that use the aluminum shutter have smooth-looking shutter blades. No honeycombs. All FM2n variants, however, have the letter N prefixed on the serial numbers, like this one here. See the N? And this would continue till the final normal variant made in 2001. There is another variant, though, that was released, a special variant called the FM2T, released in 1993 and produced till 1997. This was billed as an ultra-durable variant, with its top and bottom plates being replaced with titanium. It was listed for 1,120 US dollar dues, and while the body was adorned with titanium, these are all post-1988 or 1989 variants, so they carry the aluminum shutter. Now you know the differences between FM2s. The ad read. Before we get into this, I will say I'm not going to read the entire ad. This ad is actually a 2-page spread, and it covers a series of Nikons. I'm only just going to read the FM2 section, which is kind of small. But with that, let's actually read it. Engineered for the perfectionist, Nikon's FM2 is the fastest manual camera in the world, with a 1/4000th shutter speed to prevent picture blur and 1/200th flash sync speed to prevent ghost images caused by bright ambient light. It's a one-of-a-kind camera in its class. Operation and feel. The FM2 is interesting. To me, this body feels extremely practical. The body is made from copper aluminum silicon. It's a aluminum alloy. It's very sturdy. and I like it quite a lot. Although, to be honest, I think while this is pretty, it's not as pretty as the OM1, but still pretty. Plus, there's a bit of flare on the top of the mirror there with the texturing done. You may have noticed it. It's fairly iconic for some Nikon models. And I think overall this camera looks fairly solid, if not a little bit understated. Block out the text, and this will probably blend in with other cameras of the era. Or maybe it'll even blend in with a sea of Nikon DFs, because apparently the DF was a bit inspired by this era of Nikon SLRs. Do you see the similarities? Do you see it? Huh? Anyways, I have the black FM2, as you can probably see if you're watching this and not just listening. And you can also see that some of the paint has rubbed off on mine, like over here. This is known as brassing, and I do like this look. It gives it a unique look, but it does kind of make me wonder, how would mine look if it were super minty? And would I like that more? I'm not sure. I still like this though. But let's get back to the very practical nature of this control layout. The FM2, to me, has a very conventional control layout. From the top plate, left to right, you get your film rewind lock, rewind knob that unfolds, and you have to have the interlock turned down if you want to pop the back open before you can. Oh boy. Do that. And that's a nice touch. Interlocks, usually nice. Next, you have a shutter speed dial right there. And you have your you got the shutter speed dial right here. And it also acts as your ISO selector. Give it a twist for your shutter speeds, or a lift and twist for your film speeds. Nice and intuitive. Next, you have your film advanced lever, and it sticks out just a little bit, so you could use your thumb to move it into the Nikon standoff position, which is what Nikon calls the partially out position in the manual. And if you press or half press the shutter, the meter will come on, which brings us to the final control, the shutter. It has a threaded hole for cable release, and it has a very snappy feel to it. And it's in the winder's closed position, it also acts as a shutter interlock, preventing you from being able to snap a picture without first thumbing that advance lever. Looking at the front, you get a PC sync port, lens release button, and under the K in Nikon, you might see, actually I'm not sure if you will, there's actually a little port just under there, and that actually is what projects your aperture value into the finder. Then, moving on, we have a little lever just behind the lens mount, giving you your aperture stop down. And you have your self-timer lever right here. Overall, very conventional layout. Finally, if you flip the camera this way, you have somewhere. Here. There you go. Your rewind release button. Press it, and you can rewind your filmsies. Easy peasy. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie. After shooting the OM1 for a bit, I'm a tiny bit of a convert for that control scheme. The FM2 is good, don't get me wrong, but I now think the OM1 is pretty damn near perfect for a film SLR. Specifically, I actually thought that shutter speed control on the lens barrel was quite nice. The position on the FM2, very normal and very conventional, but I realize when I am using it, I do have to move the advance lever out the way, then action the dial. and I tend to have to move my head back a tiny bit to do it. Now, the overall, this is perfectly fine, and I still, when I'm doing it, I can generally still see your meter readout and tell what's going on, but that lens control or that shutter control on the OM camera systems is real good. Anyways, time to stop talking about OM cameras. Rest in peace. We'll continue on with the FM2. When it comes to the viewfinder, this is a great and easy system. Frankly, I love it. There are only 3 LEDs. You got a plus, a 0, and a minus to the right side of the finder. And these correspond with 5 different combinations. If you have just a plus, it means you're more than 1 stop off. If you have just a minus, it means you're more than 1 stop off in the other direction. If you have just one of these, it's perfect. And if you have a combination of plus or minus and one of these, you're between 1/5 stop and 1 stop off. Easy peasy system. Try to get things right there. So overall, simple. When you do look through the finder, you will notice that your shutter indication curves a little bit into the finder. And I think overall it looks pretty neat. Up top is where you're going to find the aperture projected from the actual lens. And overall, I like the layout. It gives you 3 distinctive spots for where you are to look for the information that you need to shoot the camera. The FM2 has a very mechanical sound to it, obviously, and it also has a very distinctive winding sound, kind of a ratcheting noise, which we'll demonstrate shortly. The shutter itself, when you press it, feels very sharp and nice. It has a good thud, followed by a bit of a ringing noise. We'll see if we can actually catch that. Overall, this camera is quite distinctive, and I love the shutter sound. Overall, the combination, though, doesn't make it a particularly stealthy camera. Let's listen to a couple shots. When it comes to metering, I found the system is overall, it is very reliable, and it is a center weighted system. So something that you can generally get a good feeling for. But we'll see the results of that in the sample gallery. For the most part, I think things came out pretty well exposed. Film and film scanning. I feel like this is getting a little bit repetitive. If you watch this channel, feel free to skip the chapter and just go straight to the sample shots if you want. Otherwise, I shot 2 rolls of film, one Flic film Electra 100, and the second was a Fuji 200. Both were scanned on my Minolta Scan Dual 4, and the RAWs were scanned at maximum resolution. No dust reduction was applied. I then did the editing in RAW therapy. Now, let's have a look at these samples. Recommendation and conclusion. So, for one reason or another, maybe also because of that photo with this camera and that lens, or any other manner of reasons, these things, these FM2s, they sell for horrendous amounts of money. Body only for either the FM2 or the 2N, expect on the low end to pay around 275-ish US dollars. And on average, it's looking more like 425-ish dollars, with exceptional copies selling for more than $600. There's no eBay joke here. Damn, that's just expensive. Now, this goes without saying, but I'm gonna say it anyways. eBay copies may or may not need servicing. Some sellers do say they've been looked at, some do not. So if you do feel like you need to factor in the cost of a service, do so. Now, for a copy from a retailer like Camera Store with a K or KEH, I see FM2s go for around $575, and sometimes some FM2Ns in excellent condition selling for up to $975 on these sites. That's a lot of dollars. The question is, even at the low end, do I think that this camera is worth it? No. Holy hell no. It seems I got real lucky with mine. I came into this on a whim. I went to pick it up, and I am glad I did. Holy moly. Unless you happen to love this series, or specifically want a mechanical SLR that tops out a 1/4000th of a shutter, or that you think that you too can become that photographer who took that photo, then I recommend looking elsewhere. I will say, I really did enjoy the high shutter speeds that this camera can get. I did use the 1/2000th quite a lot, and even the 1/4000th at times. I appreciated that as an option, and it was just really nice to have, but not a necessity. I will say, if you are used to modern cameras and modern high shutter speeds, then yes, this might be a nice option. And yeah, if you are used to those, maybe those newer cameras with high shutter is like 1/8,000th. You may be put off by other SLRs, but I don't think it's worth paying the money just for that. And this is, I think, especially true if your only concern is enjoying film, then there are other cameras to be had. If F-mount is where you want to look at, I would also suggest having a look at the Nikon FG. It's a fraction of the cost and has a lot of solid features. And if you don't mind just an aperture priority camera, I would recommend also having a look at Nikon EMs. They seem to be very, very cheap, and I have one of those as well, and I like mine. Otherwise, if you're just looking for a general camera recommendation to start with on film, I would steer clear of this, especially if you're not sure if you're gonna like film in the first place. Seriously, look into the Olympus OM mount film era SLRs. Again, those things really took me by surprise for how good value they are. For the cost of an average FM2, you can have an OM1 and a whole suite of lenses. And I honestly think that's a better value. But now it's time for me to ask a question. What other very hyped up film cameras are out there? And which ones do you think I should be looking for? I'll be honest. Again, when I went to buy this thing, I was not tracking that the FM2 was this pricey. But does anyone have the actual FM2T? Do you feel the extra robustness? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Maybe a super thanks if you're into that. Till next time, bye.